As is common with the world of comics, there are more terrible ways to meet your end than there seem to be good ones. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda. Today we'll be counting down the top 10 worst ways to die in Marvel Comics. And boy, are there some terrible ones. If you lived in the Marvel Universe, which character or place would you avoid at all costs for fear of meeting your untimely end? Let us know. Number 10. Freshly hatched spiders. Yuck! This is one of the worst ones out there if you're asking me. It comes to us from one of my all-time favorite spooky Marvel stories, which is featured in Edge of Spider-Verse issue number 4, the previous Edge of Spider-Verse, not the newest one to come out. And the story that we're talking about here is that of Patton Parnell. I love Patton Parnell. Patton Parnell is an alternate version of Peter Parker who is basically a psychotic serial killer in the making. Once he is transformed by a radioactive spider bite, he gains more confidence and literally turns into a monster. He gets revenge on his Uncle Ted, who has mistreated him throughout the years, by placing spider eggs inside of him. Yikes! And, well, those eggs hatch. Uncle Ted isn't the only one who seemingly meets his end this way either. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not smash that subscribe button? I know there's some of you out there, some of you that aren't subscribed, probably not you folks that are commenting. I know you've probably subscribed, but you over there, yeah, you should subscribe. Number 9. Lights, Camera, Fire. I feel like so many of these are going to come from Punisher comics because honestly, it's one of the darkest characters we have over at Marvel, and he has also had his own Max series, which was basically all about living on the edge when it came to more graphic subject matter. So if you want some of the worst ways, that's where you're gonna go. You're gonna go to Punisher Max. Case in point, in issue number 30 of Punisher Max, when Frank is in the midst of hunting down those who own an operation that treats people as though they were mere objects. It's a thing I can't say on this platform, but I think you know what I'm talking about here. It's that kind of operation where you're treating people like they're not people. One of the worst things a person can do in terms of business, and one of the most powerful motivations in comics for heroes, or rather anti-heroes, to seriously mess up some bad guys, which is exactly what Frank does to the men involved who are stationed in America, and woman. The older man, Tiberiu, Punisher captures and lights up, recording his demise on film as a warning to be delivered to those in Moldova. Number 8. Strung up like a Christmas decoration. This is going to be an interesting one to try and describe here. Whew, I do not envy myself in this moment. This demise also comes from the Punisher Max issue. Same story, but an earlier issue. Here in issue 28 of the series, before he gets to the head of the operation, Frank deals with his son, Christu, attempting to get information from him on his father, Tiberiu, and their associate, Vera. He attempts to get him to talk by seemingly numbing him and using his organs as basically decorations for a tree. I don't know of Christu's fate, but I can't imagine it ended well for him, knowing how Frank usually deals with criminals. In fact, I'm pretty sure everyone has assumed, based on other things that are mentioned, or just in general based on Frank's nature, that Christu does not make it. Number 7. Crushed by tumors. Of course, when it comes to some of the worst ways to go, it doesn't get more gruesome and depressing than ruins. Every time I think I've escaped this alternate reality and my mind is free from it, there's always another list that brings me back to Marvel Ruins. In Marvel Ruins, one of the worst ways I've seen to go is the way of the Hulk. In this reality, superpowers are depicted as being brutally realistic, so when Bruce Banner becomes irradiated, instead of turning into, his giant, muscular, and vibrantly green alter ego, the Hulk, he just develops a bunch of green tumors that become so large that they basically crush him beneath their weight. Number 6. Death off panel, but then also cannibalism? Janet Van Dyne's death in the Ultimate Universe has to be one of the worst. First of all, we don't even show her enough respect to give her a death on panel, as she drowns during the tidal wave in Ultimatum, one of the many poor victims who die off panel despite deserving an on-death panel, especially considering Janet at the time was the leader of the Ultimates, so there's also that. But then, she also gets eaten by the Blob for some reason. It's also weird that they decided to make the Blob do this. I mean, the use of people eating people in Ultimates is just weird in general. I know the Blob is a bad guy as well, but he isn't typically known to be like a cannibal anywhere, ever. Feels like some weird and extremely gross sizeism to me. Number 5. Steamrolled. Well, this one did not kill the person who was victim to it. It would kill most other people and is still one of the worst ways I can think of to die that I've seen on display in the Marvel Universe. This death, not really a death, but you know, could be, comes to us from the pages of Punisher issue number 17, part of the Marvel Knights line, written by Garth Ennis. It seems oddly slow and terrible, a properly terrifying way to go. Yep, we're talking about when Punisher has Wolverine steamrolled. This also happens after Wolverine has already suffered a ton of other awful stuff, losing the skin on his face, getting shot point blank below the belt, and having suffered an attempt at removing his legs with a chainsaw. While he obviously lives past being steamrolled thanks to his healing factor, Wolverine has heightened senses, so he would also feel immense pain with every single inch that the steamroller rolls over him. And he actually goes feet first underneath it. Yikes. Number 4. Shatterproof glass. So this is one of those things where the actual story behind it makes it a heck of a lot worse, and also more poetic in some ways. Once again, we're going to Punisher Max, and once again, we're going to the same story that I was talking about earlier with the insidious operation that Punisher attempts to put a stop to, helping to free the women who find themselves basically trapped within it. However, not all the women involved in this operation are actually victims. One of them is actually a crucial part of running the business, and even suggests how to best break the women they are holding and using so they can be more easily used and manipulated, more malleable. When Frank runs into her, he knows her involvement and decides to dole out a pretty awful punishment: death by being tossed repeatedly into shatterproof glass, which eventually does give out, with the woman, Vera, falling to her doom. I think it's the moments in between being tossed against the glass brutally that really make me feel this is one of the worst ways to go. Those pauses in between, I'm like, oh, cause you know what's coming and you have like no control. I don't like that. I don't like it. Number 3. Slowly consumed. Yeesh! This is probably one of the worst ones I've ever seen or read. I mean, all of these are really bad, but this one haunts me. This one haunts me to this day. When I think about it from a psychological perspective, well, I can't really fully do that because it just messes up my mind too much, so I can't really do it, but you get the idea. Basically, during Marvel Zombies, which happens in an alternate reality, where most of the heroes and villains succumb to the virus, but not all of them, one of the people that manages to survive for a good long while is actually T'Challa, aka Black Panther. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that he gets out of the story unscathed, although he does not become a zombie for a very long time. At one point, he is lured into a trap and basically kept as a food source by Hank Pym, aka Ant-Man, or rather Giant Man, who prolongs his friend's death in order to keep the meat fresh, so that he might slowly consume him. Don't worry, Black Panther does manage to escape. He doesn't die this way, but not every single piece of him makes it. And there are others in Marvel Zombies like Mary Jane and Aunt May who actually do die by being consumed by someone they loved and trusted, Spider-Man. So, yeah. Number 2. Stomach problems. Ugh. Okay, time to talk about Old Man Logan and his fight against Old Man Hulk. If you are familiar with the Old Man Logan universe and the stories that exist within it, I think you know where we're headed. For those of you who aren't, get ready and allow me to explain. Basically, in the Old Man Logan universe, the whole world is left in an apocalyptic state after the supervillains finally win and actually defeat the heroes. Success! Wolverine himself was manipulated into turning on his fellow X-Men by Mysterio, and now is only known as Logan. He doesn't like to go by Wolverine anymore. He doesn't like to think of that because it ended terribly. However, despite all of this and everything he has lived through, Logan still manages to find a way to keep moving and even ends up settling down and starting a family. However, he has to pay money to the Hulk gang, who basically have claimed the land that he and his family live on. Logan ventures out to get said money to basically pay his weird Hulk landlords, and actually succeeds in collecting the money, but arrives home too late as the impatient Hulks returned early and actually murdered his kin. Seeking revenge, Logan challenges Pappy Banner, the head of the Hulk gang. Logan seems to lose the fight when Hulk eats him, but later on, Hulk dies of indigestion. That's what happens when you eat Wolverine. Number 1. Magneto. I think simply facing Magneto would be one of the worst ways to go. He is not a man I would ever want to come up against. I've seen him torment people by pulling all the metal out of their blood, pull off Wolverine's adamantium coating from his skeleton through his skin, and torment and kill a woman with a paperclip. And let's not forget that Magneto at his most skilled and powerful can actually just control blood flow in your body and your brain, basically taking control of your mind or just preventing oxygen from getting to your brain, thereby basically suffocating you in a really terrible way. He is basically one of the most frightening people that the Marvel Universe has to offer, and being killed by him for whatever offense he deems worthy of death, I imagine, would just be downright terrible, no matter what it was. Magneto isn't usually one known for doling out quick and painless punishments or deaths, so yeah. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for gruesome death. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want more like this, there is loads more we could talk about, so let us know in the comments. And until next time, stay safe and stay nerdy, YouTube. Bye.